Hello everyone friends, in this video I will show you how to paint a portrait in oil without a pre-prepared drawing. By chance I saw a photo of Sergei Druzhko on the internet and I wanted to paint his portrait because he has very distinctive facial features. That's a bold statement. First I'll tell you which paints I use and which colors we'll need to paint the portrait. I always use the same color palette. So which colors are necessary for this? From the browns, accordingly we have two dark colors, Leningrad Umber Natural, Mars Brown Transparent, and Light Ultramarine. Blue Football Club. Sky Blue, then English Red, Orange, Burgundy. This is Crimson Red, Durable. Next, what is this? Next is Crimson Pink, Durable, Cadmium Red, Dark, and Cadmium Yellow, Medium, and finally Titanium White. So the brushes that I will use, at the first stage I need a bristle brush size 12. We need to lay down the base, find the approximate proportions, and then we will move on to smaller brushes. There is a synthetic brush, the so-called cat's tongue, as well as just a regular round brush. Size 5 is enough for the details for this size. Of course that's not true. So first of all we take the main shades, and this kind of brush we take white as the base, and we mix the skin color. The skin color is mixed from three main colors. These are, well, accordingly white, red, that's cadmium red, dark, and cadmium yellow, medium, or light here. There won't be much difference. Accordingly here, if we have a more yellow color, we add red and white. We need to get a peach color. So basically we gradually get a color that is already more similar to skin color. Accordingly to this color, we mix in white and find the lightest shades, and we also need to find the shadow side. We mix the paint with a palette knife, wipe the palette knife thoroughly to remove the white, and we mix the shadow shades. This crimson red is strong. Brown, the thing is that Mars Brown and Umber look almost the same on the palette, but Mars Brown has a more reddish tint, it's a more beautiful color, while Umber has a greenish tint and looks dirtier. So we mix the brown, add English Red to it, and basically for now these shades are enough to get started to build our portrait. To dilute the paints or to moisten the brush, I use most often a mixture called Troinic, which consists of solvent, oil, linseed oil, and damar varnish, all in roughly equal proportions. Let's take a middle tone between a medium tone between shadow and light. Let's estimate our portrait's composition. Few of you can boast about this. You should consider changing the black. At this stage, it's very important to determine the approximate ratio of height to width. To understand this more precisely, we can already start covering the shadow area with color. In order to see what size areas we end up with, as you know, the eye axis is located roughly in the middle of our head. Accordingly, from where our hairline begins to the chin, we can roughly divide it into three parts, and accordingly we can determine where everything is. The nose begins and ends, and the eyebrows, and so on. You can generally outline more of the face. So here, once we've already established found a certain shape, we add more. Shadow areas. Why do people start with shadows? Because it's much easier to guess the tone of the shadow sides. When we have a white sheet and we're drawing from a photo or from life, there's no white color there, so we have nothing to compare it to. On a white background, we might make a mistake. The tonal base, meaning we might make it too light. Accordingly, it's better to start with the shadows because dark colors are perceived better and more accurately by the eye. You can add a little bit of blue to the shadow areas to give them a slightly cooler tone. The shadow area in general is more or less conveyed. Let's move on to the floor to this kind of halftone. We mix our peach color with our dirty brush, and to make the color a bit brighter, you can add a little orange, yellow or red. So this is moving from the shadow. The shadow beneath the lower lip. Gradually lightening the color, adding only our peach color to our brush. Or even lighter, maybe some white, well not pure white, but a mix matching our skin tone.
If you didn't get it, you'll understand soon.
We'll fill it up with foam completely. With your face? At the first stage, you don't need to think about resemblance, you need to think about the proportional components on the face, where everything is and how much space each part takes up. For example, what part the forehead takes up in relation to the face or the whole head, the nose, how big it is, or on the contrary, how small it is. You don't need to make the person look similar right away. The main thing for us is to convey the proportions, to find the proportions, since we don't see these proportions at the very beginning. Since we don't have a drawing yet, we gradually build them based on the principle of moving from simple to complex. We first found the silhouette. Next, we find the shadow part of the head, that is, we work with the large masses, large areas. Then we gradually move on to the halftones and find those details that become more obvious. Since there is already something ready nearby, look, since we have skin, after all, skin flows, we found it. I'm adding to the color. Our halftone, just a little bit of red to add some reddish shades here and there.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
So it doesn't look monotonous. So we have some spots where a bit of red or burgundy shows through in these spots, and here we add more. Our shades of red. Don't forget that we have cheeks, and above the cheek there are such patches of light, they will always be lighter. Since we've more or less found the halftones, we gradually move on to the highlights. You can wipe the brush more thoroughly. I wiped off as much paint as possible on the rag, and now I'm taking our colors that we mix for the skin. But since our brush is still dirty, first we don't do the brightest areas, but the ones next to them that are the brightest in tone. By doing this, we clean the brush and at the same time lay in the halftones. We can show the ear right away, it's glowing there, it's kind of orange there, maybe even a bit burgundy. The bridge of the nose is almost the brightest spot on the face. It can only be outshone by the forehead, since the forehead is even more directly facing the light. It's facing the light even more. So we add the brightest spots since we already have the brush. I'm adding a little bit of red. Mix it so that we don't have it. The face is one color. Where can you add a little bit of orange, maybe a bit of yellow somewhere? Where do you see any shades that stand out to you? You can enhance them because a photo tends to wash out a lot of shades and we end up seeing a more even single colored face. If you look at the face in real life, you can notice a lot more shades than in a photo, so let's approach it gradually. To the closing, the whole face with color, and now when we cover it with color we will already move it where parts of the face are needed for clarification. We approach the lips. Here you can take a smaller brush, I'll take a round brush and add to it. And more. I'm mixing our peach color with pink. Add a touch of brown so the color isn't too pure. And while I'm adding the lips like a spot, stronger. Not trying to draw it precisely. For now I'm just finding the spot. So now you can look at the proportions and see what looks right and what doesn't. First of all, the lips, since they're most likely in the right place, because the size from here to the nose and to the chin is very similar. So you can start refining them now, but don't add too much detail too quickly. Because when we build the other parts of the face, we'll probably need to move something somewhere, since we're not sure about the accuracy yet. Next we can add a shadow under the lip. It's not that sharp, not that dark. That's why I removed the excess paint from the brush. With it, I'm removing the excess paint from the canvas. Next, without hurrying on the lips, I focus on other facial areas. In order to bring the other parts of the face to the same stage of detail. Again, I want to repeat, if we already had a part known in detail, we said are located the other parts of the face, then we could already add details. But since we don't know this, I am progressing gradually through the portrait. We find the nose more or less accurately. At this point, work quickly. Don't get hung up on the details, so you have energy left for detailing, which will come later when we find all the exact dimensions. Now let's move on to the eyes. I'm leaving the lower part of the face for now. The only thing is, you can add a little bit of a reflection here. Apply it to the cheekbone. The eye sockets stand out quite clearly, so it's easier to find their shape because of that. It's easier than when we have, without enough facial shadows, it's difficult to show volume accurately, which affects the person's likeness. we're doing a portrait, and here the facial features are quite distinct, large, and very... It's not difficult to convey distinctive features. Let's cover the entire canvas so that we can calmly, if we need to move the shape somewhere, okay, let's find it. Also the ear, while I have just this color on my brush, we have a light ear here, even a little higher than eyebrows. This means that the head is slightly tilted. In the normal position without a tilt, the ears are within the range from the eyebrows to the base of the nose. You can also slightly adjust the eyebrows, also show it. Now let's detail the eyes. You can roughly find the position of the iris and pupils. Since the eyes are blue, I'll use Blue Football Club. Blue Football Club, it's an extremely sharp paint. It eats up all the other colors. That's why you need just a little bit of it, and we mix it with some white, finding a sort of middle color. Right now we're just sketching it. Without positioning, we just assume the approximate location of the pupils. Next, we add shadows on top, mixing them with phthalo blue and our umber. Leningrad sky, natural and a little bit of burgundy color, so that the glaze isn't completely cold, and then I add a shadow on top of the iris right away. And here you can already tell whether it's in the right place now. Pupils. Next you can add some white around it. In the white, if you take a clean brush, you can add a little bit of blue and a little bit of red, just a tiny bit. And so it's not just plain white, but has a bit of a tint. In some places the blue will be more dominant, in others the pink will be more dominant. We add some white, the eyes immediately start to stand out. I add white underneath and on top. I'm going to blend it now with the shadow that's there. Since above us the eyes are in the shadow, so there won't be a pure white there, it'll be a bit lighter. Alright, now I'm wiping the brush thoroughly. And I'm blending this upper part right here white off. So now we need to find the placement of the lower eyelid. For this we'll need our light pink color. And even if there's a slight bluish tint in it, that's actually good because that shade exists. Lilo, that kind of shade. As always, often the upper and lower eyelids we find the thickness. So now our white one, the one that was on the lower eyelid, and you can dilute it a little, make it not so bright. Soften the color a little just with a dry brush a bit. Blend it with the neighboring areas. Next, we can now find the upper eyelid. But for that, we first need to add some darkness. As much as needed. Right now it's not enough, it's still dark there. Right here we have it. It's dark. And here? Also here we have it too. Accordingly, where our upper eyelid connects with the eye socket. So now we can work more accurately. With the pupils, with the iris. So we have the iris, we found the dark part, and we had the main middle color. Now we need to find the light parts. The irises that are exposed to the light, we can also take a blue, a sky blue, and mix it with some white. And now we can find the light part. Right now I got a really bright color. You can tone down this brightness a little by adding the same brown to it. You can add it here. Where the nose is, we have a little bit of light. Alright, next let's add the pupil itself, even more black. And you can add a highlight so that our eye would shine. We just take white and add it. It's very important for the highlight to be there. And on both eyes on the same side in the same place so that it looks even. Alright, next. So that while our paint cools down a little to the canvas, you can do it for now. The clothes and the background, then continue working on the portrait in detail. Although the only thing is you can add something here, some more distinctive features like these. Wrinkles and shapes where the bridge of the nose is. That's right here. Folds and here. Alright, now you can find the characteristic shape of the lips so that we can already understand how our proportions are, whether our portrait is similar. Sergei. The upper lip is a completely different shape. We'll adjust it first with a shadow between the lips. The same thing, I lay in a shadow there in a solid mass, and then I'll start correcting it now. Wiping the paint off the brush, I'm already moving. Move the paint on the canvas where it belongs. The shape of the upper lip. Now let's adjust from the top, and accordingly we will have left the shape we need, which we edited below with a shadow. From the top we shape it with skin. And already we'll get the shape we need. Now when we've added the only shades, don't forget about the relationship of the tones in different parts of the face. That is, you can compare, let's say, the cheek with the nasolabial triangle and see if it's darker or lighter. We need to do this part. This comparison matters because it shows volume. Already adding lighter ones. Shades. So now it's clear that the lip on this side goes a little bit more. We'll move it now. First, we'll move it. We'll find the shape more precisely. And then we'll move the lip a little bit. Understood. So what about now? The resemblance is clear. To let your eyes rest a little, you can work on the background and the clothes. I also take a brush, pre-select, and I mix our violet lime sweater. I take blue football club and rose madder. You can lie in the shade right away. You can slightly refine the outline, the shadow part. Add along the outline more thoroughly. Now we just need to draw the intro for Sergei Druzhko so that he was completely in character. That's all.
There's a strange feature. If you connect the cities of Rostov, Taganrog, and Shakhty, you get a triangle.
Let's keep painting the portrait. We're now in the second session. During this session we need to work out the face in more detail so that it becomes even more lifelike. Let's begin as usual with the dark areas. That is, we'll add darkness where it's missing. Also, if the head shape already looks noticeably off somewhere, it looks like you can adjust it with the background or with the skin color if it's smaller than it should be. To add a richer color, I use permanent red matter plus Mars brown and apply it over the paint. I'm using synthetic brushes now. I subjected it to such. With this kind of blending, I add the shades that I need. The advantage of this blending is that you don't need to make transitional colors, it's enough just to rub in the color where needed with no more transitions required. You can also add a little bit of pink to this color and maybe a little bit of blue to make the color cooler. Now work on this transition with Tyrannium. Closer to the sweater's checker, it starts to reflect this lilac purple color. So we take our pink, add a little blue and white to it. And with this color, we can cover the cheek a little. But we need to highlight the cheek somehow, compared to against the background of the shirt. And also we darken the shirt itself in the place where it is joins with the cheek. You can take that same burgundy and mix it with blue. And you can make this area darker compared to the photo to highlight the cheek more. Next, let's separate the kitchen more clearly. And let's add a brighter color there. Red, orange, maybe even a little bit pinkish. We can add that next. Let's darken the shadow under the nose a bit. I'm also taking our Bordeaux Crimson Red, and we can use umber next. Since the face is slightly tilted, in the drawing it turns out almost straight. We need it just a little bit. That's all because the nose turned out very straight. We need to turn the nose a little to the side. For this set, we need to slightly shift the upper area, the one that's highlighted, to the side. Right now it's in the middle, so the nose doesn't tilt when it turns. First, I pick it up with the halftone. You can even add a little more shadow. Add it. Next, I find the lower shadow part of the nose, adding a more saturated shadow to it as well. On the tip of the nose, and then I take the lightest one, version on the upper bridge of the nose, where the most light hits. I mix in a little bit of yellow and add it this color, and I move our paint, move the area to the side. I'll also need to move the shadow at the nose wings to reduce one side and enlarge the other. While I have a light color on my brush, I'll add a little bit to the missing areas. The ear goes a little higher. We won't raise it too much, so that it can be seen clearly on the clone. Alright, left and right sides of the nose, almost unnoticeable. You can add a bit of color there, to the lower part. This lets you highlight it slightly, so that its shape is more readable. Next, our Vodrea is on the right, like this, at an angle along the turn of the nose. It's more closed. That's why now we'll cover it up, and that's how we get the turn. The face, the turn of the head. Next you can add a little bit of a dimple here on the cheek. Maybe orange, just a little bit. And this darkness, this kind of halftone, will continue further. This way we will separate the surface facing the light and the cheek, which is in such a halftone. Well, it's practically in the light, but not the brightest area. Next, the cheek. In my opinion, this part is a bit much. You can determine this by the distance where our eye is. This is the distance. We need to make the cheek a bit smaller because black is a very harsh color. It's very hard to understand the brush, not just to wash it. I'm moving it with my finger so it doesn't get dirty where I need to. Alright, let's add, for the lips, just a little bit of pie shades. We're missing some lighter shades on the top of the lower lip. The lower lip gets more light, so it's lighter. Naturally, we use a pale pink. The area that's facing the light, naturally it's lighter. And her lower lip is a bit bigger. A bit lighter. Accordingly, we need to show this. And then the upper lip closer to the corners. And the lips end. Well, there's a kind of half tone there, a bit of shadow, meaning the lip curves inward. It's even there. Because of the stubble, there's a slightly bluish light blue tint. Here as well. There are also a few small reflections right here. It's really great, they convey the roundness of the form at the corners of the lips. There's a shadow here and a reflection along the edge. We soften it a little. We make it barely noticeable. Okay, lower lip, there's even more light here. And this light transitions onto the skin, also into the light. Okay, from the corner of the mouth. Here it gets darker, and it roughly... From the light, it matches with the upper part.
Who didn't understand will understand.
That is, we have the lower part from the corner. The area below the mouth's corner is slightly darker, especially the sublabial triangle. Alright, next the expression wrinkle, it will really be here. Also very distinctive. Alright, the lower part of the face, actually I already really like it. We can leave it like this for now, so that the eye can rest from it a bit and move on. Refine the eyes. I'll add some bright accents, a pure burgundy color. Alright, next let's move on to the eyes. The eyes are still bigger than they need to be. But considering how much time we've spent on them, about 15-20 minutes, maybe even less, that's fine. Well, here you need to highlight the very prominent upper and lower eyelids. First, as usual, we'll start with the dark areas. Because the dark areas are usually in the background. Accordingly, it's more logical to lay down the dark layer first and then the light one. So, upper eyelid, It immediately stands out a lot. This is the shadow above the upper eyelid. Next comes more of a burgundy color. Brown, burgundy, a little lighter. It's the same here. Okay, we've pretty much laid down the darks. And the same way, you can also highlight the lash line, but it's less burgundy, more of a brown color. It's more of a brown color, so we'll highlight that as well. For girls and women, it's usually almost a jet black line, the brightest part in the eyes, and for men, it's especially noticeable in this case. Here, it's not as prominent. That's why I use English red. And Mars brown. There, in some places, it's even lighter than the surrounding areas, because the eyelashes are light.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Where the right eye is, that stripe is more clearly visible. Next, there's a burgundy red shade in the eye corners. And it's quite rich like this. Next, with the color of our skin, and a little bit, I even it out. Eyes, I remove the excess white just a little. There's some pink here, some yellowish tones on the skin. Pink, very often it's present on the lower eyelids. So the outer corner of the eye also stands out. And there's also burgundy brown there, as well as here. The lower eyelid itself, it also stands out a lot. We'll also take our burgundy brown. Our brush is already dirty, so it gives a kind of muddy shade. And on the left side as well. The eyeball, apart from the lower eyelid, also there's a distinct shadow here on top. Of a bluish purple color. Next is our maroon one, which we put in as a bright spot. First, you can darken it a bit in the center and slightly blur the edges so it doesn't look so sharp. Next, right around the tear duct in the corner of the eye, there's a gentle pink color. which stands out quite a bit. The light hits it very well here, that's why it's so bright. Just need to adjust the lower eyelid a bit more so it doesn't look like that. Uniform and nearly all white. Now the eyes are ready. You can add a bit of pink to the lower eyelid. So it doesn't stand out too much. It's not natural. Alright, next. Let's fill it in with pure white. The areas where the eyeball really shines, where the light falls on it, you can see it very clearly in this eye. Here the upper eyelid on one side catches the light. Naturally we put the light there. But on the other side, the upper eyelid doesn't catch the light, but it's still more visible. Alright, now let's add the pupils. Let's add deeper shadows to the top of them. I'm using blue with brown. And the pupils themselves are at the bottom. They also stand out, but not as much as at the top. Oz is blue with brown too. The brown here helps tone down the blue's brightness. Now we can add blue, a purer one, to bring a bit more brightness to the eyes. For this I'm using ultramarine. Mix its pure form with white. So the lower eyelid on this side, I probably made it a bit too dark. It transitions here, you can soften it. So what do we have so far? We still need to do the ear properly. It's hard because it's next to our dog background. Now, not to get the brush dirty, to do the ear. So we still have to work on the neck just a little bit. Where the neck is, here we have a more bright dark shadow. So where the eyes are, under the eyebrow, we have a small reflection. It's shown here just a little, but you can make it more distinct. Same here. By the way, the eyebrow isn't that bright. So the orange-red color is such a bright reflection here, we can show it just barely noticeable. You can even use burgundy, orange, and red, or just burgundy with orange and add a little bit. Bright spots. Well, I guess that's it. The portrait is finished. Thank you all for your attention. If you have any questions or suggestions, write them in the comments.
Bye to be continued. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. Subtitles Dima Torzak. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. Subtitles Dima Torzak.
Subtitles. If this video ends up in the right hands, it will become popular.